When you say rear-engined, air-cooled, and flat-six in the same sentence, pretty much any car enthusiast in the world would assume that you are talking about a Porsche 911. But in this video, we aren't. We're talking about a Chevrolet, specifically the Chevrolet Corvair. Now, the Corvair was designed by Chevrolet initially as a compact car meant to compete with the incredibly successful Volkswagen Beetle. It was not designed from the beginning necessarily as a sports car, but the American way is that if something doesn't exist, we make it happen. And the Corvair really did evolve over time. Thanks to the madmen like Don Yenko, who was also the guy that was stuffing L88 Corvette motors into customer Camaros back in the late 60s, this docile economy car that was once described as being unsafe at any speed was given nearly double the factory horsepower and a host of other supporting mods that turned it into a seriously capable car on track. And Don Yenko would call his creation the Yenko Stinger. This is the story of the 1966 to 1969 Corvair Yenko Stinger. Hey everybody, welcome to Rare Cars. This is the channel where we dive into the past and explore some of the world's most iconic and rare cars. If you want to see more short-form documentaries on cars like the Bill Thomas Cheetah or the Z01 Camaro and others, then make sure to hit that subscribe button as we are dropping new videos every single week. But now, let's get into the fascinating history of the Yenko Stinger Corvair, or as we like to call it, America's Porsche 911. So Don Yenko is a name that you're probably aware of if you are at all a Chevy fan. He's very well known from stuffing big blocks into pretty much everything GM related in the 1960s, mainly Chevy Camaros. But before he was building all these high horsepower straight line monsters, Don Yenko had another project that he was working on. See, Don Yenko was considered by many, including Jay Leno, to be sort of the General Motors equivalent to Carroll Shelby. Both men were racing drivers that started their own performance shops and garages to build seriously fast cars. The Yenko Stinger Corvairs were actually made to compete with the Shelby GT350s in SCCA racing, which at the time the Shelby Mustangs were dominating it. And while the Corvair may seem like an odd platform choice to build the GT350 killer out of, it actually wasn't that far-fetched. In 1965 to 1966, the Chevy Camaro was still just an idea and wouldn't hit the market until 1967. Most other cars in the GM lineup were too big or required too much modification to be truly competitive with the Shelby GT350s. But around this time, the second-gen Corvair had just been released, and it was leaps and bounds better as a performance car than the prior first-generation Corvair. The second-gen Corvairs had four-wheel independent suspension, unlike most American muscle cars that did not have independent rear suspension, and the Corvairs only weighed around 2,400 to 2,500 pounds. This made them quick and agile in the corners. Couple that with the rear engine and rear weight bias configuration that was similar to that of the Porsche, these second-gen Corvairs were radically different than anything else that came out of an American car company. And Don Yenko thought that that might just be the edge he needed to dominate in the SCCA racing series. Now, there were a few different options to choose from when buying a stock Corvair, but Don Yenko opted for the sportier Corvair Corsa as the base car to build his track weapons on. The Corvair Corsa in stock form featured a 164 cubic inch flat six that made 140 horsepower in naturally aspirated form. The base model cars had four individual single-barrel carburetors. There was even a 180 horsepower turbo version of the Corvair Corsa available from GM, but Yenko opted to stick with the naturally aspirated version to build his Stingers on. Now, in order to compete in the SCCA Class D production racing series, which is the racing series that Don Yenko wanted to compete in, he would have to build 100 production versions of his Yenko Stingers to be able to do so. So he first bought a 1965 Corvair Corsa and got to tinkering. Now, to be eligible as a sports car, the Corvair would have to have no back seats. So the team ripped out the back seats of the Corvair Corsa and went to work hopping up the car. The Corvair Corsa's stock independent suspension was a good starting point, but for real track duty, they had to overhaul it. Yenko fitted the Stingers with new springs and shocks at all four corners to help reduce body roll, and to keep the car more composed while cornering. Track driving also meant aggressive braking. So Yenko went to the GM parts bin and used a larger Cadillac master cylinder to help with the limited braking performance. All the Yenko Stingers featured a posi traction rear end as well. Now under the hood is where things got really interesting. The stock 164 cubic inch flat six motor, or 2.6-liter motor, served as the base engine for all the stages of the Yenko Stinger. And yes, I did say stages. Similar to a modern Roush Mustang, where different stages of the car are available, representing different heightened levels of performance, the Yenko Stinger was no different. There were 4 different stages of the Yenko Stinger. Stage 1 was the base model. This included the suspension mods, plus a 160 horsepower tuned version of the stock flat 6. The 20 horsepower gain over stock was mainly achieved with a carb retune and some internal motor work. MSRP on the Stage 1 cars was $3,450. The Stage 2 cars made around 190 horsepower thanks to a host of other engine modifications, including a new cam, new pistons, new valve springs, a polished crank, and an increased compression ratio of 10:1. They also received a full new instrument package on the interior. MSRP for the Stage 2 cars was $3,950. The Stage 3 Stingers were an even more hopped-up version of the Stage 2 motor, higher compression, ported heads, and forged 40-over pistons. The Stage 3 cars made 220 horsepower. MSRP on the Stage 3 cars was $4,350. The Stage 4 Yenko Stingers were the full-bore race version. These were lightened and stripped down to be purpose-built as SCCA race cars. With some other engine mods, these cars made around 240 horsepower. MSRP for the Stage 4 cars was $5,000. There was even rumored to be a Stage 5 Yenko Stinger with a larger motor and a fuel injection system that made around 250 horsepower. However, I can't find that much info besides a reference to this on CorvairCorsa.com. Now on the exterior, the Yenko Stingers were all delivered in ermine white with blue stripes. These cars featured a custom rear spoiler and super cool adjustable rear vents to allow airflow into the engine compartment in the back. Every version of the Yenko Stinger remained air-cooled. Now racing data on the Yenko Stinger is sparse, but according to the RSC database, the Yenko Stingers competed in 22 races, placing first in 3 of them and placing third 2 other times. Sadly though, with the introduction of the Camaro in 1967, the need to use the wildly different Corvair as the base for the Yenko Stinger to compete in SCCA racing just was not there anymore. So much of the Horsepower Wars research and development effort was going towards developing better and better V8 power plants. The Corvair was such an outlier from this that it really didn't make sense to continue making the car. Corvair sales themselves drastically dropped off following the introduction of the Camaro, and the last year of production ended in 1969 for the Corvair. This also meant the end for the Corvair-based Yenko Stinger. In total, Yenko built just over 100 Yenko Stingers over the production run, and outfitted a couple dozen customer cars with Stinger packages as well. Fast forward to 2023 with the Porsche 911 having cemented itself as the greatest sports car of all time, and still using its same rear-engine flat-6 layout, one can't help but wonder what would have happened if Chevrolet and Yenko kept at it with the Corvair and Corvair Stinger. Would the US have had another long-running sports car to offer besides the Corvette? Unfortunately, we will never know. And that concludes the short history of the Yenko Stinger Corvair. If you guys enjoyed this video, we would greatly appreciate it if you could drop a like and also share this video with other enthusiasts. Also, please make sure you are subscribed to the Rare Cars YouTube channel and smash the notification bell for more documentary-style videos just like this on the world's most interesting cars. Until next time, enthusiasts.